Earlier, we were discussing the race for District 6, and the man who made his big announcement yesterday that he's running for city council, Charles Moster, in studio. Charles, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Chad. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's get you a little bit closer to that microphone.
Absolutely.
Tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. I have been a business attorney, actually, for the last 30 years representing small businesses in Washington, D.C., and actually, I believe it or not, worked for the Reagan administration as a young lawyer back in the early days with the Economic Development Administration. So I'm very much about development and increasing those opportunities. Most of my career has been spent, as I said a moment ago, representing small businesses. So I'm aware that small business in America generates all the jobs, and particularly in economies like Lubbock, Texas. And so that is one of my major focuses, how to make that more efficient and more jobs and for everyone else.
What was it that made you decide to jump into city politics and to run for city council?
Well, truth be told, I think I was urged here. And I'll say it somewhat in a general way. If you walk around my community, there's a great deal of dissatisfaction, and I say that without exaggeration, with respect to the incumbent, Latrell Joy. I've heard over and over again folks wanting me to come into this race because they feel that she was elected with a certain promise and representation as to positions that she would take. And when you match up the actual actions she took versus what she represented, they feel that they're betrayed. And I've actually heard those words, betrayed, with respect to Second Amendment and other types of issues. So they're looking for someone who was willing to challenge that, would be willing to be an advocate. That's my background as a litigation attorney, and very strongly believes in Second Amendment values and what we believe here in Lubbock, Texas. If I do get elected, and it's a privilege, I'm not going to veer from that. I'll do what I say.
Well, I think Latrell Joy is probably one of the biggest liberals on the city council, and you mentioned it yesterday that this city council has drifted at numerous times to the left. And I think this is a very important election for city council because we can either move this council in a conservative direction or to a more liberal direction, which I hope it moves to a more conservative direction. Is that one of your big pushes is, hey, we need to – we're known, West Texas, Lubbock, Texas, known as one of the most conservative cities. We need to be represented in that way.
Absolutely, and that's the whole purpose of representative government is that when we elect our representatives, particularly if they make certain platform positions, they should stick with it. Lubbock, Texas is known throughout the country as being one of the most conservative counties in the United States. That's not a position that is surprising to anyone else, so we expect our representatives and city council to stick to that position. And when they don't, we're disappointed and we need to replace them.
Visiting with Charles Moster, who made his announcement yesterday that he's running for District 6 City Council. Let me ask you this question when it comes to small businesses, and you talked about how you've represented small business. One of the issues that came upon the City Council was private property rights. This time, this past year, there was a smoking ban that was tried to be put into place. My feeling is that this city council will be approached in the future not only by a smoking ban, but other bans that tend to, go against private property rights. Where do you come down on those issues?
Well, I'm very much for eliminating as much government regulation as we possibly can. I mean, that was my philosophy when I worked for the Reagan administration and the way I work right now. So, for example, with a smoking ban, I'm opposed to any kind of restrictions. I think it's a personal choice that someone should make. Now, I make that point, and those who know me, I'm adamantly opposed to smoking. I think it's dangerous. I want to do everything we can to encourage our kids not to smoke, but I think it's a personal choice, and I think business should have that right. So the litmus test is let's do our best to eliminate any restrictions that we can on business. It's a laissez-faire attitude. It's what started this country, and let business hum. As soon as we get business involved with government and vice versa, that's when we see increased costs, loss of production. It happens at the national level. It's happening at the local level, Chad, and that's really what I've been emphasizing. With all the big issues in the debates, we're thinking about what's going on the national level. Well, we have to fight the battle here in Lubbock, Texas. That's what's going to affect us. You can count on me to oppose positions that restrict the operation of business and free choice. I've been in large government. I started in large government in the Republican administration in Washington, and it doesn't work, whether it's Republican or Democratic. Let's get government out of our pocketbooks and let's get it out of our lives. And I say that having worked in Washington, D.C., so these are just not shallow or hollow words that I'm making. I've actually lived this, and it's the best way to run a city.
You brought up an interesting part of, I guess, the ordinances, codes out there, which was the sign ordinance, which is something that I have heard from numerous business owners. We got to talk about the sign ordinance. We got to update the sign ordinance. And you hear a little bit of chatter, but it doesn't seem like many members of the city council have wanted to really take that issue on. Tell us why you think it's an important issue in this town.
Well, one of the reasons is that I represent small businesses. So I've represented printing companies. I've represented small businesses on 34th Street, businesses that have faced horrible impediments in terms of simply putting up signage so they can advertise. If you look at the statutes, and I'm also a regulatory attorney, so I have some background in writing statutes and analyzing statutes, but my focus is business, they absolutely make no sense. They go back to cable car days, believe it or not, and it's ridiculous. So, for example, if one wants to put a sign in the ground with a stake, the statute is unclear whether you need an engineering report. And I've had clients actually ask me to render an opinion on that. Whether you live or work on a major thoroughfare versus a side road determines, from a statutory standpoint, whether you're allowed to put up a large sign or not. I'm a small business. You go by my law firm, you'll see signage. I'm not embarrassed of signage because we do that. So why are we giving preferences to some people and not others? So the statutes logically don't make sense because they add impediments. Companies go out of business, or if they don't, they add more cost to you and I, and it's preferential, so it's dead wrong. So it's not going to be popular for me to go through the statute books, but I happen to read statutes for a living, and I'm going to go through that list, and I'm going to pick out probably the 5 or 6 stupidest statutes, and then I'm going to see if I can get a consensus to get rid of them. We don't have to live by these statutes, and there are a lot of things even at the federal level that we can repeal and get rid of, but the focus is here in Lubbock. And that's what I'm going to focus on. I think my legal background and governmental background can really help. Let's get rid of stupid statutes, and if we do that, we'll actually see the economy improve without spending a single dollar.
I'm going to have to say you're going to need a lot of luck finding only 5 or 6 and narrowing that down to the dumbest statutes or ordinances or whatever that we may have.
Yeah, well, I don't want to date myself, but anyone who can remember Johnny Carson, he used to have that special list that he had, and you may remember that, Chad. And I forgot what that list is, but I'll put on my Johnny Carson hat maybe at some point and come down with the 5 stupidest statutes.
I like it.
And we'll have to get rid of them.
I like it.
Why not? They're not etched in stone, and our statutes are not the Bible.
Visiting with Charles Moster in studio. We'll take the break. When we come back, we'll take not only your questions, but we've got more questions as well to get into here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. We're visiting with Charles Moster, who announced yesterday running for City Council District 6 against Latrell Joy. We'll get to some of the comments that she has had already for this race here in just a second, but let's head to the phones. And Charles, you have a question for Charles, correct?
Yes. First of all, I'm excited about him taking on the sign Nazis, and he said that after I called, and I think that'd be fantastic for small business. One of the hardest hits that small business took in Lubbock this last year was the stormwater fees, and that's one reason I won't be voting for Glenn Robertson. I did vote for him for mayor. I sure won't vote for him for Congress, because he supported stormwater fees, he voted for stormwater fees, then held anti-stormwater fee meetings, and nothing happened. And now he says, send me to Congress, I'm not too excited about that, but I'll give you an example. My small business, one of them, is a low-revenue but large footprint business. It draws in only 180,000 gross receipts a year. Mm-hmm. I pay the same stormwater fees as Walmart, and they do that in half a day at just one of their stores. And that you talk about tailored to nail small business, that's it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
There were some people with riding stables there at those meetings and churches, and it's just a horrible thing that has been done by our city council. I'd like to hear your comments on that, and I'll hang up.
Thanks, Charles.
Sure. Well, I agree with you 1,000% on that. My background is small business, so I represent businesses seemingly just like yours, and it's hard enough to survive the first year without all of these crazy regulations. With respect to these stormwater fees, as I understand it, initially it was rate-driven, and then there were changes of city council, and I believe that Luttrell was behind some of that, which changed it to impervious surfaces, I believe. What that means is, and I actually had a small business come up to me, they were paying $60 a month, and it went up to $600. So a small business can be paying as much as Walmart. That's insanity. That's absolutely crazy, and that would be one of the top. I'll probably put that at one of the top 3 stupid regulations or statutes that we have to get rid of or revise. It makes absolutely no sense. Why are we preferring large businesses to small businesses? And in fact, why are we changing a rate structure that was more tailored to individual use to something that's global? Anyone that authorized that, particularly Luttrell, who I believe was behind it, has no understanding of small business. I run a small business. I represent small business. I have anxiety, sorry employees, every 2 weeks when I have to worry about paying my payroll taxes. It makes me nauseous. I don't want to have to worry about a disguised fee that suddenly I have to deal with. So I agree with you 100%. We got to take that on. And I understand small business. That's got to go. I'll do everything I can to change that. And Luttrell, I believe, was behind that. We
received a text message on the KFYO text line from a listener out there who I believe lives in District 6, and mainly they were complaining that lack of access, I guess, to Luttrell Joy. That this particular texter says that, I've sent emails, haven't heard anything back. Lack of town halls, just a lack of communication. Is that something you've also heard from folks, and how do you fix that?
Yeah, I have heard that. And again, I have kind of a special ear because I represent I wouldn't say all the small businesses certainly in Lubbock, but a number of them. And I heard at least from 2 small businesses and one in particular, that they had a concern. They called Luttrell and didn't get a response for 3 weeks. So I think that is abhorrent. When we represent the city and we represent a constituency, we have to be responsive. That's how we are. I've been at this for 30 years, and my sense is that you're either an interactive, responsive, caring, compassionate person, or you're not. And you can't retool somebody. So if somebody doesn't want to listen, doesn't care, is not interested in other people, and just has their own agenda, they're not going to pay attention. So you can't create responsiveness where it never existed before. So those who are thinking about learning more about my platform and myself, I encourage you to just ask about people who know me. And I think they will tell you uniformly that I'm very responsive, and I want to find out what's going on. So that's going to be a key part of my campaign, and that's how I live my life. I'm not making that up. That's how I function.
Luttrell Joy was asked by the AJ, I guess her response to your press conference yesterday, your announcement, and she said that your accusations were misleading and misinformed, and I'm not sure exactly which ones she was talking about, maybe moving the council to the left and maybe her being to the left. She said this in response, or partly in response to the AJ. Quote, "We've been working on master leases. We've been doing everything we can to keep from increasing the debt. We still have a city to run. It's easy to sit on the side and criticize."
Okay, that's precisely the problem. I'm not sitting on the side and criticizing it. She's saying, I have a city government to run. Well, then why don't we run it efficiently? And if you can't run it efficiently, get the heck out of there. That's the point. We're sitting on a $1.2 billion debt in a small city like Lubbock, Texas, West Texas. That's unfathomable. If it was the federal government where I used to work in a Republican administration, hey, guess what? We can print more money. Or we could raise the debt level. I think that's a bad idea, but you're not seeing the United States go bankrupt. Well, guess what? Cities across the country can go bankrupt. And if you're carrying a $1.2 million debt, I think our debt service is over $150 million. It's gobbling up our budget. That's insanity. How did that happen, and what can we do to stop it? So what I'm hearing from Luttrell in her comment is, well, I have a city to run. Well, you're running it into the ground. That's what I have to say. And in terms of being misleading, the statement itself that is misleading. I'll have her point out one thing that I said that was misleading. Did she not introduce 2 resolutions to cut back on the Second Amendment, which I say are immutable? That was a shock to people in the 6th District, and many of them will vote for me simply because of that situation. Did she not champion the change in the rate structure with respect to stormwater fees? She was behind that, or with it, and that has crippled small business, which we just heard. So she has taken positions that have hurt small business that are inconsistent with our strict conservative values. If she wants to take a liberal position, there are many other places where she can run. Not in Lubbock, Texas, particularly when you represent yourself to be a certain way. So there's nothing misleading about it. And then again, deal with the issues. You're saying I have a city to run, which I think was her comment, paraphrasing. That worries me. Well, does that mean that we're just going to keep increasing the debt? That's what she's done? We're going to keep borrowing? Are we going to mortgage our future? And all of us out there, I'm a small business owner. How are you going to survive if you're carrying a huge debt equivalent to $1.2 billion? Guess what? You'd be out of business. So we have to stop that. And I'm going to be a force in the right direction to do that. But I'm going to need, obviously, the support of other council members, and hopefully I'll be able to persuade them to follow in that path. It's not going to be easy, but someone has to say no. And I haven't seen anything Latrell said so far that disputes any points that I made with respect to the positions that she's taken, with respect to the Second Amendment and other things.
We had a drive-by caller who wanted to get your thoughts on Citizens Tower. You have some members on the city council who say, look, this is a done deal. What are your thoughts, I guess, overall on Citizens Tower? Do you think we need to change course? I guess, what are your whole thoughts on that situation? Well,
part of the process is being able to prioritize. And there's always like 20 things you can think about. Mm-hmm. And in my view, excellent people made recommendations and decisions. I have a background in business development. I represented the Economic Development Administration. They're like the massive small business administration in the Reagan administration. Those decisions have been made. They're good decisions. Let's stick with them. Instead of rewriting that script, let's focus on things that we can do something about, like the $1.2 billion debt, like ordinances that we can change, like preventing regression in terms of more statutes that restrict the operation of business. Those are things we can focus on. Those other things right now, I think we should go with those decisions that have been made. Monies have already been spent. Engineering studies have been done. People were paid to do what they came up with, and I think we should support those decisions.
Well, and everything that I've heard, it's a done deal. That unless you just get to the end and you say we're going to sell a building now that no one wanted to buy in the first place,
right?
That we have spent the money, we have gone into all these contracts that it's gotten done.
Well, that's precisely right. And you're speaking to a civil litigator here about contracts, and when contracts are violated, it's a breach of contract. And I know people have grumbled about, and rightly so, about city council agreeing to settlements with respect to problems that occurred. So, hey, let's make a huge problem. Let's breach some of these massive agreements. Okay, and then let's face millions of dollars worth of liability. I understand contract actions, and I know that there are very few defenses. So I think that would be probably a good thing for lawyers. And one representation I'll make to you all is that I am never going to do any legal services whatsoever with my firm for the city of Lubbock. You can count on that, which is something the incumbent did not do.
Absolutely. Charles, tell people how they can get in touch with you, find you on the Internet, so they can find out more about yourself.
Sure. The easiest way to find us is on Facebook. So just go to facebook.com/Charles Moster for Council, okay? Or actually the best way to say it is Moster for Council, M-O-S-T-E-R for Council. And then you'll be able to find us. Or just search for Moster, M-O-S-T-E-R, City Council on Facebook. And it's not the easiest name, but remember, Most for Lubbock, Moster, however you want to pronounce it.
I like it. Thank you, Charles.